The Arizona Attorney General has indicted an out-of-state couple for defrauding the Empowerment Scholarship Account Universal Voucher Program. The fraud began in 2022, and the couple amassed more than $110,000. The Grand Canyon Institute says the case raises significant financial integrity questions. And for more on what happened, we welcome in Dave Wells, Research Director at the Grand Canyon Institute. Dave, welcome back. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
How did this recent case come about that led to this indictment? And I guess as a really long-winded second part of the question, how much is going on that we just don't even know about?
Well, I don't know, but I was able to bring some of the kids with me. So actually, Erin, Poppy, and Penny, Elizabeth, and Joyce Fox over here.
Now let's explain that.
And I was able to also bring Tucker, Vance, Wyatt, Arlo, Rocky, and Mikey. Gil here, and the other kids wouldn't fit behind me, but I've got the Diaz, Dobbs, and Cole families behind me.
Well, so you lead us to that. How many were real kids in this case, and how many were made-up kids?
So they say that there are 43 made-up kids out of 50, and it opens the questions about like if they weren't so greedy, because I'm presuming a number of these kids were approved, and these were very promiscuous families that had lots of kids, and but I think that might be why they got caught. I mean, yeah, and so the idea is that if you're not that greedy about it, we don't know how many folks really shouldn't be getting ESAs. That's because and it's really and they live in Colorado when they did this, and supposedly live in Utah, and so they got expenses paid for, presumably in Colorado. Well,
so what do you make of Superintendent Horn taking credit for, to whatever extent, catching these folks?
Well, I mean, they got caught, but I mean, I don't know when they started to look at it and so forth. But it's clear that under his administration, the expenses were approved, and kids were made legitimate when they weren't. So they did catch on, which is good. But we have to have much more oversight. I mean, I think this is something that's, because what's really disturbing is they have no staff, they don't have enough staff to oversee the program. So what Horn has also announced this week is that all those backlogs of under $2,000, we're just going to approve all those. And it's like, and we'll look at that later, but if you're understaffed, how are you going to ever go back and check those kind of things for fraud?
It seems just quite bizarre. So I know you have some ideas about how to make sure that, since the voucher program has expanded, some ways to keep it in check. Tell us some of those ideas.
Yeah, well, I mean, and first of all, I think what should happen is I think Governor Hobbs and Superintendent Horn ought to have a joint call for a special session of the legislature because it's a win-win. I think the idea is that Horn needs more staff. And Governor Hobbs should be calling for reforms to the ESA program. So I think it's something that everybody could come together on. So part of what we want to see is an audit of what's actually occurred so far, because we really wonder about a lot of the kinds of expenses. And a lot of this is because of homeschooling, because homeschooling has opened it up a Pandora's box of possibilities. And we'd like to see parents have to document an educational plan for their kids, then show that they fulfilled something with it, and have to reapply each year. And there's money to help do all this, because we estimate there's $360 million at the end of last year that wasn't spent. So you could simply take that money and use it to pay for staff and many other things.
Well, so why is that money then not going back into the general fund for other uses?
Well, because you have to pass legislation to make that happen. So right now, when a parent gets an ESA voucher, it's in their account. It's like a debit card, and they spend it as long as the expenses are approved.
So how much more complicated has this become with the expansion of the program, which of course we know that Arizona voters actually rejected it, but then it was put through and we have this. So now that there are so many opportunities, so much more money, I sort of asked you at the beginning, more concerns about fraud, but how much more complicated has it become when there's so much money going around here?
I think it's when you have the homeschooling piece of it, and you made the program so much bigger, because generally in Arizona, if the legislature likes something, they don't actually put enough funds in it. Like we had issues with charter schools, and they didn't provide enough staff to oversee charters. In 2018, we were part of the effort to criticize what was going on, and they actually doubled the staff of the charter board. Still, pretty tight, and that's sort of something I think really has to be given a lot more thought and scrutiny. And we'll have a report out soon looking at fiscal year 23 that looks at most of the ESA recipients are using homeschooling. I mean, so they're not all private schools, and private schools are much clearer. Homeschooling is a real mess.
Well, David, it's funny. This is such a partisan issue, and yet when you talk about making it, I mean, more efficient, taken care of in a proper way, less waste of money, people who actually need it getting the funds, I would think that would bring people together, but apparently because it's so partisan, we probably won't see that. You mentioned Hobbs and Horn getting together. We don't expect to see that, do we?
I don't, but they're going to watch the show and they're going to say, why didn't we think of
Dave
that?
Wells is so
Why they have
brilliant.
to hear me say it, right? So they can take credit for it when they do it. I'll back off.
Last minute or so, do you think the concept when the ESA voucher program was created, in some cases for folks who were, most cases, low income or folks with kids with disabilities, was it a good idea at the time and it's just become too much of a bear?
No, I don't think it ever was a good idea because, I mean, private school subsidies are simply not accountable. We've shown that they've actually helped wealthier folks. Actually, I know a low-income family that just started an ESA, but the reason is because they have one car. The child doesn't want to go to school. If they misses a school, they can't get the bus. They can't get the kid to school. There's a lot of other issues going on, and if we provided better support for families like that, then that child would be in a better state, and the ESA program is not going to fix it.
Okay. Dave Wells, thank you. Good to see you.
Oh, good to see you.
Here.